How can one sentence said at the wrong table turn respect into silence? That night, my daughter assumed I was too outdated to understand her words. She didn't realize the sentence wasn't the insult. It was the trigger. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. The restaurant had that kind of lighting where everything looks softer than it should. Warm brass fixtures, white tablecloths that probably cost more than my work shirts. I sat at the far end of the table, exactly where Hazel had positioned me, close enough to look involved, far enough to stay out of the real conversation. "This is my father, Beck," Hazel said when Klaus Reinhardt arrived. Her smile was professional, the kind she used on clients. "He's retired now, but he helps out sometimes." Retired. That word again. I nodded at Klaus. German, mid-40s, expensive watch. The kind of man who measured everything before he spoke. He shook my hand with the correct amount of pressure, then turned his attention to Hazel. Martin Keller arrived next, operations manager. Loud tie, louder laugh. He clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends, even though we'd met exactly twice before. "Beck, good to see you, man. How's the garage treating you?" "Fine," I said. "Still getting your hands dirty at your age? That's dedication." He meant it as a compliment. Probably. But the way he said it made it sound like I was holding on to something I should have let go years ago. Hazel jumped in before I could respond. "Dad keeps busy. It's good for him? Good for me. Like I was a dog that needed walking." The menus came. I ordered something simple. The others debated between courses like it mattered. Klaus asked questions about expansion timelines, lease agreements, staffing models. Hazel answered with confidence. She'd always been good at sounding certain, even when she wasn't. Martin jumped in whenever he could, adding details that made him sound more essential than he was. Hazel let him. They had that rhythm people develop when they've worked together long enough to finish each other's sentences. I ate my salad and listened. Halfway through the main course, Klaus switched to German. Not abruptly, just a casual shift, the way bilingual people do when they want precision or privacy. He asked Hazel something about financial projections. She answered in English, but he stayed in German for his follow-up. Hazel glanced at me, then back at Klaus. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture relaxed, like a subtle permission had been granted. Martin leaned in. "Wish I'd paid more attention in high school," he said, grinning. "Could have been useful right about now." Hazel smiled. Then she said something in German. Her pronunciation wasn't great, stilted, textbook, but clear enough. Versteht sowieso nichts. Wir können offen sprechen." He doesn't understand anyway. We can speak openly. Klaus paused, fork halfway to his mouth. His eyes shifted to me for just a second, then back to Hazel. Martin laughed. Not because he understood, because Hazel had said it with that tone, the one that implies a shared joke. I kept chewing. Klaus set his fork down carefully. He didn't switch back to English. Instead, he asked Hazel a direct question about her funding sources. In German. Slowly. She hesitated. Just a beat. Then answered in English. "We have solid backing," she said. "Family investment, primarily." "Family," Klaus repeated. In English now. He glanced at me again. "Your father?" "Among others." Klaus nodded. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. The conversation moved on. Dessert menus appeared. Martin made a joke about carb loading. Hazel laughed at the right moments. Klaus remained polite but distant. I finished my coffee and set the cup down without a sound. Hazel signed the check with a flourish. "This was wonderful," she said to Klaus. "I think we're positioned perfectly for this partnership." "We will see," Klaus said. Neutral, professional. We stood, handshakes all around. Klaus held mine a fraction longer than necessary, his eyes searching my face for something. I gave him nothing. Outside, the air was cooler than I expected. Hazel and Martin walked ahead, already talking about follow-up emails. Klaus moved toward the valet stand. I stood on the sidewalk and watched them. The sentence circled in my head. Not the words themselves, the assumption behind them, that I was deaf, invisible, outdated, that I wouldn't understand. I got into my truck and drove home. The radio stayed off. I needed the quiet. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the cab for a long time, engine ticking as it cooled. She didn't know I'd spent 3 years in Munich in my 20s. Didn't know I'd learned the language well enough to negotiate contracts with suppliers who refused to speak English. Didn't know because I'd never mentioned it. Never needed to. But tonight, She'd decided I was too old to matter, and she'd said it right in front of me. I got out of the truck and walked inside. The house was dark. I didn't turn on any lights. Just stood in the kitchen and let the silence settle. Tomorrow, I'd go to the shop like always. I'd check inventory, talk to customers, make sure the book's balanced. But tonight, I just stood there, and I remembered everything. The auto shop opened at 7. I was there by 6:30, same as always. The building wasn't much. Cinder block walls, concrete floor stained with decades of oil. But it was mine. Paid off. No partners, no investors, no one telling me how to run it. I made coffee in the back office and sat at the metal desk I'd bought used 15 years ago. The chair creaked when I leaned back. Everything here creaked. Everything worked. The phone rang at 8. Hazel. Hey, Dad. Just wanted to thank you for last night. Sure. I think Klaus was impressed. Martin said he seemed interested. He asked any more questions? Not really. Why? Just wondering. She paused. I could hear her moving around, probably at her flagship salon. The sound of hairdryers in the background muted conversation. Listen, she said. I know these dinners aren't really your thing, but it helps to have you there. You know, showing family support. Right. Anyway, I've got a client in 5 minutes. Talk later? Yeah. She hung up. I set the phone down and stared at it. Family support. That's what I'd become. A prop. Someone to fill a chair and make her business look more established than it was. It hadn't always been that way. 12 years ago, I'd sold my auto parts chain. 4 locations, built from nothing over 23 years. The sale had gone well, not retire to Florida money, but enough to be comfortable. Enough to help Hazel when she came to me with her business plan. She'd been 21 then, fresh out of a cosmetology program full of ideas. She wanted to open a salon. Not just any salon, something upscale, modern, a place where clients felt pampered. I'd read her proposal. The numbers were optimistic, but not insane. She had drive. She had vision. I'll back you, I'd said. But I want to see the books every quarter. Of course. And I want to understand the structure, legal, financial, all of it. Dad, I'll handle... I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying I want to understand. She'd agreed. And for the first few years, it worked. She'd call with questions. I'd visit the salon, talk to her manager, review the spreadsheets. We were partners. Not equals exactly. It was her vision, her business, but she respected my input. Then the second location opened, then the third. Success changed things. Suddenly, she had people around her. Martin came on as operations manager, an accountant, a marketing consultant. People who spoke her language, who understood branding and social media presence and customer experience optimization. I was still writing checks, but I wasn't in the meetings anymore. We've got it handled, Dad, she'd say. You don't need to worry about the day-to-day stuff. Then, you should enjoy retirement. Then last night. Versteht sowieso nichts. I opened the filing cabinet in my office. Second drawer from the bottom. I kept copies of everything there, investment agreements, quarterly reports, contracts, organized by date, labeled clearly. I pulled the folder marked Hazel Business Investment. The original agreement was straightforward. I'd provided 80% of the startup capital. Hazel would manage operations. Profits would be split proportionally after she drew a reasonable salary. Standard stuff. But there were clauses. Clauses I'd insisted on. Page 7, Section 4.2. In the event of expansion requiring additional capital investment, original investor retains approval authority over funding sources and terms. Page 9, Section 5.3. Investor reserves the right to review all major contracts and partnerships prior to execution. Page 12, Section 7.1. Failure to provide quarterly financial documentation within 30 days of request constitutes breach of agreement and triggers renegotiation of terms. I hadn't looked at these clauses in years. Hadn't needed to. Hazel had been good about keeping me informed. Until she wasn't. I set the folder on my desk and thought about Klaus. About his questions. About the way he'd looked at me. He'd been doing due diligence, trying to figure out who actually controlled the money, and Hazel had told him I didn't matter. My phone buzzed. Text message from Hazel. Martin just sent Klaus our expansion proposal. Fingers crossed. Expansion proposal. I picked up the phone and called Elaine Porter. She answered on the second ring. Beck, it's been a while. I need you to review something. What kind of something? Investment agreement, and I need you to find out if any new contracts have been signed without my approval. Silence. Then, Hazel's business? Yeah. When do you need this? Soon as possible. I'll call you back. She hung up. No questions. That's why I'd worked with her for 23 years. Elaine didn't waste time on curiosity. I sat back in the creaking chair and looked around my office. Pegboard walls with tools hanging in neat rows, work orders clipped to a board, everything in its place. This was real. This was something I'd built with my hands and my brain. No consultants, no operations managers, just work. Hazel's salons were successful. I didn't doubt that. But I was starting to wonder how much of that success was hers and how much was the infrastructure I'd paid for. The bell over the shop door chimed. Customer. I stood up, smoothed my shirt, and walked out to the garage floor. Back to work. Back to things I could control. But the folder stayed on my desk, and I knew I'd be looking at it again soon. The parking garage was almost empty at 9 p.m. My truck was on the 3rd level, near the elevator. I'd been at Hazel's flagship salon for the past hour, dropping off some paperwork she'd asked for. I hadn't gone inside. Instead, I'd sat in the truck, watching the salon through the windshield, watching her move around inside, talking to staff, checking product displays, laughing with a client. She looked confident, in control. I'd been about to leave when I saw her and Martin come out the back entrance. They stood under the security light, close enough that their conversation looked private. I rolled my window down an inch. Klaus is being careful, Martin was saying. But that's good. Shows he's serious. I just wish he'd commit already, Hazel said. The expansion timeline is tight. He will, once he sees we're solid. What if he asks about the funding structure again? Martin laughed. Then we tell him what we told him last night. Family backing. Your dad's got the money, even if he doesn't understand the business anymore. Hazel didn't laugh, but she didn't correct him either. He was good tonight, she said. Quiet. Didn't try to jump into the conversation. See? Perfect. Klaus got to see the business is run by people who know what they're doing. No offense to Beck, but I know. They went back inside. I sat there for another 10 minutes, then started the engine and left. Now, alone in the parking garage, I replayed that conversation. Even if he doesn't understand the business anymore. I gripped the steering wheel and stared at the concrete wall in front of me. I'd built a 4-location auto parts chain from a single storefront. I'd negotiated with suppliers, managed inventory, handled payroll, dealt with insurance and taxes and licensing. I'd made it profitable enough to sell for 7 figures. But I didn't understand business. I pulled out my phone and checked my email. 3 messages from Elaine, all sent within the last hour. The first was short. Found something. Call me. The second was a scanned document, a contract between Hazel's company and Klaus Reinhardt's firm. Dated 2 weeks ago, partnership terms, expansion funding, profit-sharing arrangements. I hadn't seen it before, hadn't been asked to review it. The third email was longer. Beck, the contract violates Section 5.3 of your investment agreement. She needed your approval before signing. Also, she's missed the last 2 quarterly reports. That's Section 7.1. You have grounds to renegotiate terms or withdraw funding. Let me know how you want to proceed. Elaine. I read it twice, then I called her. You saw the contract? She asked. Yeah. Did you know about it? No. That's what I thought. Beck, she's in breach. Technically, you could shut her down. I don't want to shut her down. Then what do you want? I thought about Hazel's face in the restaurant, the way she'd relaxed when she thought I couldn't understand, the casual dismissal in her voice. I want her to remember who made this possible, I said. Elaine was quiet for a moment. Okay, I can work with that, but we need to be strategic. If you go in loud, she'll fight back. Lawyers, emotion, the whole mess. I'm not going in loud. Good. Then here's what I suggest. We talked for 20 minutes. Elaine laid out options, legal pathways, financial restructuring, leverage points. She spoke in her usual precise way, no emotion, just facts. When we finished, I sat in the truck and stared at the phone. This wasn't anger. Not really. Anger was hot, impulsive. This was something colder, clearer. This was understanding. Hazel thought I was obsolete. A relic from an earlier, simpler time. Someone who'd gotten lucky once but couldn't keep up with the modern world. She'd decided that without ever asking me. Without ever testing the assumption. And she'd made that decision right in front of me, in a language she thought I didn't speak. I started the engine and drove home. The house was dark and quiet. I made a sandwich I didn't really want and sat at the kitchen table. The overhead light hummed faintly, the only sound in the empty space. I thought about the years after I'd sold the business, the way I'd scaled back, bought this modest house, kept only one shop. People had asked why I didn't retire completely, why I still got up early, still worked on cars, still kept the books balanced. I'd told them I liked staying busy. That was true. But there was more to it. I'd spent 23 years building something real. Something that worked because I made it work. I wasn't ready to let that go. Wasn't ready to become someone who just existed, filling time until time ran out. Hazel didn't understand that. Didn't understand that competence doesn't expire. That someone who built one successful business could probably build another. That wisdom isn't the same as being outdated. She saw me working at the garage and assumed it was all I could do. She'd forgotten that I chose it. I finished the sandwich and washed the plate. Then I went to the small desk in the corner of the living room, the one I used for personal paperwork, and pulled out a legal pad. At the top of the page, I wrote, timeline. Then I started writing, not everything, just the key moments, the investments, the missed reports, the contract signed without approval, the German sentence at the dinner table, facts, not feelings. When I finished, I tore off the page and filed it in the desk drawer. Then I went to bed, but I didn't sleep right away. I lay in the dark and thought about that moment at the restaurant, the moment when Hazel had assumed I was invisible. She'd made a mistake. Not because she'd insulted me, because she'd shown me exactly what she thought. And now I knew. Elaine's office was downtown, 12th floor of a building that tried too hard to look modern. Glass and steel, minimalist furniture, a receptionist who smiled like it was part of her contract. I took the elevator up and checked in. 5 minutes later, Elaine appeared in the waiting area. Beck, come on back. Her office was exactly what you'd expect from a corporate attorney. Organized, impersonal, efficient. 2 chairs facing her desk. A laptop, a legal pad, 3 precisely stacked folders. She gestured to one of the chairs. I sat. How much time do we have? I asked. For what? Before Hazel figures out something's wrong. Elaine opened the top folder. Depends on how careful you want to be. If you move quietly, maybe 2 weeks. If you want immediate results, you could trigger the contract clauses today. I don't want immediate. Good. Immediate gets messy. She pulled out a document. Here's the situation. Hazel signed the expansion contract with Klaus without your approval. That's a clear violation. She also hasn't provided quarterly reports for the past 6 months. Another violation. What does that give me? Legally? Everything. You can renegotiate the terms, demand full oversight, or withdraw your investment entirely. Would that collapse her business? Elaine didn't hesitate. Yes, she's leveraged. The salons are profitable, but she's used those profits to fund expansion. If you pull your backing, she won't have enough liquidity to cover her obligations. The lease on the 3rd location is due for renewal next month. She's got payroll for 43 employees, inventory orders that she's committed to. Without your capital backing those commitments, she'd be scrambling within 2 weeks. I leaned back in the chair. What about Klaus? What about him? If he finds out the funding structure is unstable, does he walk? Probably. Reinhardt's known for being cautious. He doesn't take risks on shaky foundations. I've seen his other partnerships. He does extensive due diligence. The moment he senses financial instability, he'll pull out. And in this market, that kind of withdrawal sends signals. Other potential partners will hear about it. I nodded slowly. Okay, so here's what I want. I want Hazel to understand exactly what she's built on. I want her to see it clearly, publicly. Elaine's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened. You want leverage without explosion? Right. That's harder, but possible. She made a note on the legal pad. We'll need to structure this carefully. Timing matters. And you'll need to stay calm, completely calm. I'm calm. She looked at me, really looked. Beck, I've known you for 2 decades. You're one of the most disciplined people I've ever worked with. I've seen you handle vendor disputes, employee issues, sale negotiations. You never lose your composure, but this is your daughter. I know. If you lose control at the wrong moment, this falls apart. Worse, it makes you look vindictive, emotional, and that undermines everything. I won't lose control. She studied me for a few more seconds, then nodded. All right, here's the plan. First, we file a formal notice of contract breach. That's procedural, covers you legally. Second, we schedule a meeting with the bank to restructure the funding access. Third, and this is critical, we do nothing visible until you're ready for the confrontation. No emails to Hazel, no phone calls about business. You stay completely normal. And Klaus? You can talk to him, carefully, but don't reveal too much. Let him come to his own conclusions. He's smart enough. We spent the next hour on details. Documents to sign, bank meetings to schedule, conversations to avoid. Elaine walked me through it step by step, making sure I understood every consequence. She showed me Hazel's contracts, highlighting clauses she'd agreed to without understanding, financial projections that assumed my funding would continue, partnership terms built on support that was never guaranteed. "She's been operating as if your money is permanent," Elaine said. "That's the core mistake. She stopped seeing it as your investment and started seeing it as her resource." When we finished, she walked me to the door. "Beck," she said, "one more thing." "Yeah?" "When this happens, when the shift comes, it will permanently change your relationship with her. There's no undoing a lesson like this." "I know." "Are you sure? Once this goes public, there's no apology that fixes it." I thought about the restaurant, the parking garage, 12 years of being slowly erased, being introduced as retired like a finished chapter. "Yeah," I said, "I'm sure." I took the elevator down to the street. The afternoon sun was bright and unforgiving. I walked 3 blocks to a hotel lounge, the kind filled with business travelers passing the hours between meetings. Dark wood, leather chairs, quiet conversations tucked into corners, a place where decisions settled and stayed settled. Klaus Reinhardt was sitting at the bar, laptop open, coffee cup half empty. I'd called him that morning, suggested we talk. He'd agreed, but carefully. Neutral territory, public place. Smart. I sat down 2 stools away. Ordered coffee, waited. Klaus glanced over. "Mr. Darren." "Beck." "Beck." He closed the laptop. "You wanted to speak." "Just wanted to check in, see how you're feeling about the expansion." He measured his words. "Hazel is enthusiastic. The business model is interesting. But," he smiled barely. "No but. I am simply being thorough." "That's smart." We sat in silence for a moment. Klaus sipped his coffee. The bartender polished glasses at the far end. Someone laughed quietly at a table behind us. "The other night," he said finally. "At dinner, Hazel said something in German. I remember. She assumed you did not understand." I looked at him. "Did she?" His expression shifted. Not surprise, exactly. More like confirmation of a suspicion, like he'd been testing a theory and just got the answer. "You speak German," he said. Not a question. "Lived in Munich for 3 years. Long time ago. Worked with suppliers there. Had to learn." Klaus nodded slowly. He understood now. What had happened at the table. What Hazel had assumed in front of someone who knew better, and what that assumption revealed about how she operated. "And you said nothing," he said. "Didn't feel like the right moment." "No," he agreed. He lifted his coffee, then set it down untouched. "In my experience, people who are underestimated usually allow it for a reason. Maybe. And when they stop allowing it," he said, "things change quickly." I didn't respond. Klaus closed his laptop. "Thank you for the conversation, Beck. I need to review a few more details before finalizing anything with your daughter. Financial, structural." "That's wise." "Yes." He stood. "It was good to speak with you, honestly." He left. I finished my coffee. The bartender asked if I wanted another. "No," I said. Outside, the afternoon light was sharp. Things were moving now, quietly, but moving. Hazel had invited me to another dinner the following week. A celebration, she'd said. Klaus would be there, Martin, other stakeholders she wanted to impress, people expecting to witness her success. She planned to announce the expansion, make it feel inevitable, make it feel earned. I'd agreed to come because I wanted to be there when everything she'd built on assumptions returned to her. Not loudly, not angrily, just with a simple truth, spoken clearly, in German. I wanted to see Klaus's face when he realized what she'd revealed that night. About her judgment, about her respect for the people funding her ambitions. I drove back to the shop. The afternoon stretched ahead. There was real work to do, and for the first time in months, I felt something unexpected. Clarity. The bank meeting room was small and windowless. 2 chairs, 1 table, overhead fluorescent light that made everything look slightly gray. The branch manager, a woman named Patricia who I'd worked with for 15 years, sat across from me with a folder open. "These changes are pretty significant, Beck," she said. "I know. You're moving a substantial amount out of the joint investment account. It's my money." "Legally, yes. But Hazel's business relies on that account for operating capital. If you pull this much, she'll have to restructure immediately." Patricia looked down at the numbers on her screen. Her current operating expenses are around $42,000 a month. This account has been covering shortfalls between revenue and expenses during expansion phases. Without it, she'll have to adjust. Patricia leaned back. "Beck, I'm not trying to talk you out of this. I'm just making sure you understand the implications. She's going to know something's wrong the moment this processes, and she's going to call you? Probably. What are you going to tell her? Depends on what she asks. Patricia shook her head slowly. I've processed a lot of family business separations. They're never clean. Someone always feels blindsided. She had 6 months to send me financial reports. Contract says she's supposed to. She didn't. Did you ask for them? Shouldn't have to. Agreement's clear. Patricia looked at me for a long moment. All right, I'll process it. But this will take about 3 business days to complete. She'll be notified. When? As soon as the transfer initiates. Automated email from the bank. Monday morning, most likely. I thought about the timeline. 3 days. The dinner was in 4. That works, I said. She started typing on her computer. For what it's worth, Beck, I hope you know what you're doing. I do. The paperwork took 20 minutes. I signed everything, initialed where necessary, confirmed account numbers. Patricia walked me through each form, explaining what it meant, what it would trigger. The transfer would leave enough in the joint account to cover 1 month of basic operations, payroll, utilities, immediate obligations. After that, Hazel would need to find alternative funding or scale back. When we finished, Patricia slid the documents into the folder and closed it. Done, she said. The transfer will process Monday morning. You'll receive confirmation by email, so will she. Thanks. Beck. She stood when I did. Whatever happened between you two, I hope you can work it out. Maybe. I left the bank and sat in my truck for a few minutes, engine off, windows down. The parking lot was half empty, Saturday afternoon. Most people were home, doing weekend things, family things. I started the engine and drove to the auto shop. It was Saturday, and I'd given my mechanic the day off, so the place was empty. I unlocked the door and went straight to the back office. The folder from Hazel's investment agreement was still on my desk. I opened it and started going through each document again, making notes on a separate pad. Not because I needed to review the details, I already knew them, but because I needed to be absolutely certain. Needed to know that every step I was taking had a foundation, that this wasn't impulse or hurt feelings, that it was justified, every clause, every date, every signature. Page by page, I confirmed what Elaine had already told me. Hazel had violated the agreement in 3 distinct ways. The expansion contract with Klaus, signed without my approval, required by Section 5.3. The missing quarterly reports, required by Section 7.1, none provided in 6 months. And the unilateral changes to operational spending, covered by Section 4.2, which gave me oversight on major financial decisions. Any one of those would have been enough to trigger renegotiation. All 3 together gave me complete leverage. By the time I finished, it was past noon. I made fresh coffee and sat in the creaking chair, looking at the notes I'd made. Hazel had violated 3 separate sections of our agreement, not through malice, probably, through carelessness, through the assumption that I wouldn't notice, that I didn't matter enough to check. She'd taken the foundation I'd built and treated it like it was invisible. On Monday, she'd find out it wasn't. My phone rang. Hazel. I let it ring twice before answering. Hey, Dad. Hey. Just wanted to confirm you're still coming to dinner Wednesday. I'll be there. Great. This is going to be such a big night. Klaus is ready to finalize everything. Martin's putting together a whole presentation. We're even going to have champagne. I'm having printed menus made, professional, really nice. This is going to look so polished. Sounds nice? It's going to be perfect. Oh, and Dad, I really appreciate you being there. I know business stuff isn't really your thing anymore, but it means a lot to have family support. You know, it shows stability. Investors like that. I closed my eyes, took a breath. Sure, I said. Okay, I've got to run. Client appointment. See you Wednesday. She hung up. I set the phone down and stared at it. Business stuff isn't really your thing anymore. I stood up and walked out to the garage floor. Looked at the lifts, the tool benches, the diagnostic equipment. Everything here worked because I maintained it, because I understood how systems functioned, how pieces connected, how to identify problems before they became failures. That was business, real business. Not presentations and branding and printed menus. Building something that actually worked. I spent the rest of Saturday at the shop, working on a transmission rebuild I'd been putting off. Hands-on work. The kind where you could see immediate results. Bolt by bolt. Piece by piece. Everything in order. When I finished, it was dark outside. I locked up and drove home. The house was quiet. I made dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, and sat at the kitchen table. Ate slowly. Thought about Wednesday. The dinner would be at the same restaurant. Hazel had reserved the same private dining room. She wanted consistency, she'd said, wanted Klaus to feel like this was a continuation of that first successful meeting. She had no idea what that first meeting had actually been. I finished eating and washed the dishes. Then I sat in the living room with the lights off, looking out the window at the street. Monday, Hazel would get the notification from the bank. She'd call me, probably upset, probably confused. I'd need to stay calm, not explain too much. Just enough to make her realize something had shifted. Tuesday, she'd scramble. Call Elaine, maybe. Try to figure out her options. Realize she didn't have many. Wednesday, she'd come to dinner trying to hold everything together, trying to pretend nothing was wrong, trying to close the deal with Klaus before the foundation crumbled. And I'd be there, watching, waiting for the right moment. The moment when she'd feel confident enough to relax, to let her guard down, to say something dismissive, something casually cruel, something that revealed what she really thought. And then I'd respond, in German, and everyone at that table would understand exactly what had happened, what she'd said before, what she'd assumed, what she'd built on. I sat in the dark living room until after midnight. Then I went to bed, and for the first time in weeks, I slept straight through until morning. Monday morning started normal. I opened the shop at 7, made coffee, checked the schedule, 2 oil changes, 1 brake job, 1 diagnostic. Standard day. At 9:47 a.m., my phone rang. Hazel. I let it go to voicemail. At 10:03, she called again. I was under a Honda Civic, replacing brake pads. I let it ring. At 10:15, a text message. Dad, call me. It's important. At 10:42, another call. This time I answered. What's going on with the bank account? No greeting. Her voice was tight. Morning, Hazel. Dad, I just got an email from Patricia. You're transferring money out of the business account. A lot of money. Moving some funds around. Moving them where? That's operating capital. I need that for what? Expansion you didn't tell me about? Silence. Then, I did tell you. We talked about it. You mentioned it. You didn't show me contracts, didn't ask for approval. I didn't think I needed to. It's been years since you were involved in the day-to-day operations. I rolled out from under the Civic and stood up, wiping my hands on a rag. Hazel, the investment agreement is pretty clear. Major contracts need my sign-off. You know this. That agreement is from 12 years ago. Things have changed. Agreement hasn't. Another pause. I could hear her breathing, trying to steady herself. Dad, I don't understand what's happening. Did I do something wrong? Are you upset about something? Just following the contract. The contract. Her voice had an edge now. So this is about control? About reminding me that you're the one with the money? It's about the agreement we both signed. You want to run the business? Fine. But the terms were clear. This is going to cause major problems. I have obligations, payroll, leases, vendor payments. If that money's not there, then you'll have to figure it out. Figure it out? Dad, this is my business, my work. You can't just pull the rug out because you feel like it. I walked to the office and sat down at the desk. Hazel, I'm not pulling anything out. I'm adjusting the structure. You violated 3 sections of our agreement. I'm responding appropriately. What 3 sections? What are you talking about? The Klaus contract, the missing quarterly reports, the operational spending changes, all in writing. All required my approval or documentation. None of it happened. She was quiet for longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Less anger, more calculation. Okay. I should have kept you more informed. I get that. But Dad, we can fix this. Let me send you everything. All the documentation, we'll get back on track. Sure. So you'll reverse the transfer? No. Then what's the point of... The point is, you need to understand the situation. Really understand it. I understand plenty. Do you? What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. Dad, I have that dinner Wednesday. Klaus is going to finalize everything. I need to be able to show stability, financial stability. If he finds out my primary investor is pulling back, maybe you should have thought about that before signing his contract. This is insane. You're sabotaging me. I'm doing exactly what the agreement allows me to do. Why? Because of something I said? Because of the restaurant? So she knew, or suspected. This isn't about one dinner, Hazel. Then what is it about? It's about respect and assumptions. Respect? You want respect. Dad, I've built something real here. 3 successful locations, expansion opportunities, a brand people recognize. I've done that, me and my team. And yeah, you helped at the beginning, but what? She stopped, realized what she'd been about to say. Nothing, she said. Look, can we talk about this? In person? Not over the phone? Wednesday? Wednesday I have the dinner. I know, I'll be there. Dad, please don't what? Don't make a scene. Don't do anything that embarrass me in front of Klaus. I almost laughed. Hazel, I've never made a scene in my life. I know, but I'll see you Wednesday. I hung up, set the phone down, sat there for a minute. She thought this was about embarrassment, about some petty revenge for a comment made in German. She still didn't understand. This wasn't about punishment, this was about clarity, about showing her exactly what she'd been standing on this whole time, about making sure she knew, really knew, that competence doesn't disappear just because someone gets older, that foundations matter, that assumptions have consequences. My phone buzzed. Text from Hazel. Please reconsider. I didn't respond. An hour later, Elaine called. Hazel just contacted me, she said. Figured she might. She wants to know her options. I told her we'd need to review the agreement terms. What did she say? She asked if you were trying to shut her down. What did you tell her? That I couldn't speak for you, but that she should probably attend Wednesday's dinner prepared for a serious conversation? Good. Beck, she's starting to panic. That's when people make mistakes. I know. If she goes to Klaus and tells him there's a problem with funding, he'll walk. You know that, right? Yeah. And you're okay with that? If that's what happens. Elaine was quiet for a moment. You've really thought this through. I have. All right, I'll keep her at arm's length until Wednesday. But after that, things are going to move fast. We hung up. I went back to work. Finished the brake job, started the diagnostic, talked to customers, processed payments, normal day. But underneath, everything was moving. Tuesday was quieter. Hazel didn't call, didn't text. I knew she was working on something, probably trying to find alternative funding, or talking to her accountant, or preparing some kind of presentation for Wednesday that would salvage everything. Let her prepare. I spent Tuesday at the shop, then drove to the old warehouse where I'd run my auto parts chain. The building had been sold years ago, converted into storage units now, but I still remembered walking through those aisles, checking inventory, talking to employees, building something from nothing. I'd done it once, built a business that worked, that lasted, that sold for enough money to fund my daughter's dreams, and she'd decided that made me obsolete. Wednesday morning, I got up early, showered, put on clean jeans and a button-down shirt, nothing fancy but presentable. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, just wanted to look like someone who knew what they were doing. The dinner was at 6. I got to the restaurant at 5:45. Hazel was already there, talking to the hostess. She saw me and came over. Dad, thanks for coming early. Sure. She looked tired, stressed, like she'd been up all night working on solutions. Listen, she said quietly. I know things have been tense, but can we just get through tonight? Klaus is almost ready to commit. After this dinner, we can sit down and work everything out. Whatever you need. I'll make it right. Okay, she looked relieved. Okay, good. Thank you. She thought I was agreeing to back down, to let this pass, to go back to being the quiet presence in the corner who signed checks and didn't ask questions. She still didn't understand. The private room is ready, she said. Klaus should be here any minute. Martin's already inside, setting up the presentation materials. All right. We walked toward the back of the restaurant. The same private dining room as before. Same white tablecloth, same lighting. Like history repeating itself. Except this time, I knew what was coming. And so did Klaus. He arrived 10 minutes later, precise as always. Shook hands with Hazel, nodded to Martin, then turned to me. Beck, he said, good to see you again. Klaus. His eyes held mine for just a second longer than necessary. A question there, a recognition. We sat down. Same positions as last time, me at the end. Hazel and Martin across from Klaus. The table set for performance. Hazel was smiling. Martin was confident. Klaus was watching. And I was ready. The waiter brought menus. Hazel ordered wine, something expensive, meant to signal celebration. Klaus accepted a glass. Martin took 2. I asked for water. So, Hazel said, raising her glass, to new partnerships. Klaus lifted his glass but didn't drink immediately. Perhaps we should discuss terms first. Of course. Martin. Martin pulled out his tablet, called up a presentation, Charts showing projected growth, market analysis, revenue forecasts, everything designed to make the expansion look inevitable. He walked through it with practiced confidence. Hazel added comments at key moments, reinforcing points, showing expertise. They'd rehearsed this, probably multiple times. Klaus watched, asked occasional questions. His tone was neutral, professional. Halfway through the presentation, Hazel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned slightly, then set it face down on the table. "Everything all right?" Klaus asked. "Fine, just some administrative details. Nothing important." But I saw her jaw tighten, saw the way her hand stayed near the phone, like she wanted to pick it up again but was forcing herself not to. The presentation continued. Martin showed partnership structures, profit-sharing models, expansion timelines. Everything looked clean, professional. Klaus leaned back. "This is impressive work. You've clearly put significant thought into the structure." "We have," Hazel said. "We're ready to move forward as soon as you are." "There is one element I'd like to clarify first." "Of course." Klaus looked at me. "The funding structure. Your father is the primary investor, yes?" "He provided initial capital, yes, but the business is dependent on his continued financial backing," Klaus finished. "That is what I'm trying to understand. The stability of the foundation." Hazel's smile tightened. "The business is stable. We have strong revenue streams, established client bases. But the expansion requires additional capital. Capital that comes from where?" Silence. Martin jumped in. "We have multiple options for expansion funding. Beck's investment is just one component." "Is it?" Klaus looked at me again. "Beck, perhaps you could clarify your position?" Hazel's face went rigid. "Klaus, my father is here as family support. He's not really involved in operational decisions." "I think he is more involved than you suggest," Klaus said quietly. The table went silent. Hazel's phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up, read the message. Her expression changed. Confusion first, then something else, something harder. She looked at me. "Did you talk to the bank?" "This morning." "You blocked the line of credit. Restructured access." "What does that mean?" Klaus asked. Hazel didn't answer. She was staring at me, trying to understand what was happening, trying to figure out if this was real or some kind of negotiating tactic. Martin looked between us. "Beck, what's she talking about?" I set my water glass down carefully. "Hazel and I have an investment agreement. It includes certain requirements. Those requirements haven't been met." "What requirements?" Martin's voice had an edge now. "Approval of major contracts, quarterly financial reporting, oversight of operational spending, standard investment terms. We've been sending updates. Not as specified in the agreement." Hazel's voice was quiet, controlled. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Following the contract." "Right now? You're doing this right now? You wanted me here." Klaus set his wineglass down. "Perhaps I should give you privacy." "No," I said. "This involves you." He stopped, looked at me. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. The contract Hazel had signed with Klaus, the one I'd never approved. I unfolded it and set it on the table. "This partnership agreement," I said. Section 12. It references established funding sources. Specifically, it states that Hazel's company has secured financial backing sufficient to support expansion obligations. Klaus picked up the document, read the section I'd indicated. "That backing," I continued, "was my investment, which Hazel represented as secured without telling you it required my approval, which she never got." Hazel's face went pale. "That's not... I didn't misrepresent. Did you tell Klaus the funding was conditional?" "It's not conditional. You've been backing the business for 12 years. Under specific terms you violated." Martin stood up. "This is insane. Beck, you can't just blow up your daughter's business because you feel left out." "Sit down," I said, quiet, calm. He sat. I looked at Klaus. "The other night, at the first dinner, Hazel said something in German. Do you remember?" Klaus nodded slowly. "She said I wouldn't understand, that you could speak openly." I paused. I understood perfectly. Hazel's eyes went wide. "You speak German?" "Lived in Munich for 3 years. Learned it fluently. You never asked." "Why didn't you say something?" "Because I wanted to know what you'd say when you thought I couldn't hear you." The table was silent. Martin looked confused. Klaus looked like he was reassessing everything. Hazel just stared at me. "What did she say?" Martin asked. I kept my eyes on Hazel. Versteht sowieso nichts. Wir können offen sprechen. He doesn't understand anyway. We can speak openly. Klaus set down the contract. You assumed your father did not speak German, and you made dismissive comments about his understanding of your business in front of a potential partner, while negotiating a deal that depended on his financial backing. I didn't mean... What did you mean? I asked. Hazel looked around the table, at Klaus's carefully neutral expression, at Martin's confusion, at the contract sitting between us, at her phone still showing messages from the bank. I meant... She stopped, started again. I just meant that you're not involved in the day-to-day operations anymore, that you're retired, that I'm obsolete. No. That I wouldn't understand modern business. Dad, that I'm just here to sign checks and stay quiet. She didn't answer. I stood up, pulled out another document from my jacket. The investment agreement. I set it next to the contract. Section 7.1, I said. Failure to provide quarterly financial documentation within 30 days of request constitutes breach of agreement and triggers renegotiation of terms. You haven't sent me financial reports in 6 months. I've been busy. Section 5.3. Investor reserves the right to review all major contracts and partnerships prior to execution. I tapped the Klaus contract. You signed this 2 weeks ago. Never showed it to me. I was going to. Section 4.2. Expansion requiring additional capital investment requires investor approval. You committed to expansion without asking. I stepped back from the table. 3 violations, I said. Any one of them gives me grounds to withdraw, all 3 together. I looked at Klaus. The funding she promised you isn't secured. It never was. Klaus stood slowly. Hazel, is this accurate? She couldn't speak. I will need to review this situation with my own counsel, Klaus said. Until then, I cannot move forward with this partnership. Klaus, wait! Hazel stood, reaching out. He stepped back. I am sorry, but I do not invest in unstable structures. He looked at me. Beck, thank you for your honesty. He walked out. Martin sat frozen, staring at the documents on the table. Hazel stood there, hands shaking. The waiter appeared in the doorway. Is everything? We're fine, I said. He disappeared. Hazel turned to me. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why did you do this? You told Klaus I didn't understand, in a language you thought I didn't speak, in front of a business partner, while spending my money. I made a mistake. You made an assumption about who I am, about what I understand, about what I've built. Dad, please. I built a 4-location auto parts chain from nothing, ran it for 23 years, sold it for enough money to fund your entire business, and you decided that made me obsolete. Tears were running down her face now. I didn't mean it like that. You meant it exactly like that. Martin finally found his voice. Beck, you just destroyed her business. No, I said. She did that when she stopped respecting the foundation she built on. I picked up my jacket. The account restructuring is permanent, I said to Hazel. You have enough operating capital for 1 month. After that, you'll need to find alternative funding or scale back. Your choice. I can't scale back. I have obligations. Then you'll have to figure it out. Like you said, you're the one who built this business. I walked to the door, stopped, looked back. Hazel was standing at the table, Martin beside her, both of them looking at the scattered documents. The presentation Martin had prepared was still glowing on his tablet. The wine Hazel had ordered was still sitting in glasses. The celebration that was supposed to happen was scattered across white tablecloth and paper and broken assumptions. One more thing, I said. They both looked up. Next time you want to dismiss someone, make sure you know what language they speak. I walked out. The restaurant was still busy when I left the private dining room. Couples at tables, conversations humming, the sound of silverware on plates, normal people having normal evenings, none of them knowing what had just happened 20 feet away. I walked through the main dining area toward the exit. The hostess smiled at me. Have a good evening, sir. You too? Outside, the air was cool, clean. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness. My truck was parked half a block away. I walked toward it slowly, not rushing, not running from anything. Behind me, I heard the restaurant door open. Footsteps. Dad! I stopped. Didn't turn around. Hazel caught up to me, slightly out of breath. Her makeup was smudged. She'd been crying. Please, she said. Please, can we talk about this? We just did. Not like that. Not in front of everyone, just you and me. I turned to face her. What's left to say? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're right about everything. I should have kept you informed. I should have followed the agreement. I should have. Her voice broke. I should have shown you more respect. Yeah, you should have. So let me fix it. Let me make this right. I'll send you every document, every report, every decision will go through you first, whatever you want. Hazel, I built something real, Dad. I know I had help. I know I had your help. But I worked for this. 12 years of 16-hour days and difficult clients and staff problems, and she stopped, composed herself. I can't lose this. I looked at her. Really looked. She was 32 years old, successful, driven, everything I'd hoped she'd become. But somewhere along the way, she'd started confusing success with independence, started believing that building something meant you'd built it alone, that accepting help meant you owed nothing. You're not going to lose it, I said. You're going to have to work harder, find new funding, maybe scale back some plans. But the core business is solid. You'll survive. Not without Klaus, not without expansion. Dad, the market is changing. If I don't grow now, then you'll grow later, or you won't. But you'll do it honestly. Honestly? I've never been dishonest. You signed a contract promising secured funding that wasn't secured. You told a business partner your investor didn't understand business. You stopped sending me financial reports because you decided I didn't need to see them. That's not dishonest? She flinched. I didn't think of it that way. I know. That's the problem. A car drove past. Someone laughed in the distance. The world kept moving. What do you want from me? Hazel asked finally. Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. I want you to remember this feeling. What feeling? Standing outside a restaurant, realizing that assumptions have consequences, that foundations matter, that people you dismiss might understand more than you think. I'll remember, I promise. Good. I started walking toward my truck again. Dad. Her voice was smaller now. Do you hate me? I stopped, turned back. No, I said. I don't hate you. I'm disappointed. There's a difference. Can I fix this? Can we fix this? Maybe, eventually, but not tonight. When? When you've figured some things out. Like what? Like why you thought it was okay to talk about me like I wasn't there. Like why you stopped valuing the help you got. Like why success made you forget where you started. Hazel wrapped her arms around herself. I never forgot. You did? The moment you introduced me as retired, like it was an apology. She didn't have an answer for that. I reached my truck and unlocked it, got in, started the engine. Through the windshield, I could see Hazel still standing on the sidewalk. Small, alone. Martin had come out of the restaurant now, standing a few feet away, phone to his ear. Probably calling someone. Probably trying to fix what just broke. Good luck with that. I put the truck in gear and drove away. The streets were quiet. I took the long way home, past the old warehouse where I'd run my auto parts business, past the building where I'd signed the papers selling it, past 12 years of history. I'd built something once, something real, and I'd sold it because I thought I was done. Thought I could retire, help Hazel, live a quieter life. But you can't retire from competence. Can't retire from knowing how things work, how systems connect, how foundations support everything built on top of them. Hazel had forgotten that, or never learned it. Tonight, she'd learned. When I got home, the house was dark. I turned on one lamp in the living room and sat on the couch. Didn't turn on the TV, didn't pick up a book, just sat. My phone buzzed. Text from Elaine. Heard it went as planned. You okay? I typed back, fine. She's going to call me tomorrow. What should I tell her? The truth. Which is? That she needs to decide if she's running a business or playing one. Harsh. Accurate. I set the phone down. The thing about respect is that you can't demand it. You can't force it. You can only show people what happens when they assume it doesn't matter. Hazel had assumed I didn't matter. Assumed I wouldn't understand. Assumed I'd keep funding her decisions without question. She'd been wrong about all of it. And now she knew. I sat on that couch until after midnight, thinking about the look on her face when I'd translated the German sentence, when she'd realized I'd understood every word, when the entire table had understood what she'd said and what it meant. That moment, that specific moment, when assumption turned into clarity. That was the lesson. Not the funding withdrawal, not the contract violations, not even Klaus walking away. The lesson was simpler. People see more than you think they do, understand more than you assume. And when you dismiss someone who's holding up your foundation, you'd better make sure they're actually willing to keep holding it. I went to bed around 1 a.m., and I slept fine. Thursday morning, I opened the shop at 7 like always. The mechanic was back, and we had a full schedule. Brake jobs, oil changes, a transmission that needed attention, normal work. The kind that made sense. My phone rang 3 times before noon. Hazel. I let it go to voicemail each time. Around 2 p.m., Martin showed up at the shop. I was under a Ford F-150, replacing a starter, when I heard the bell over the door chime. My mechanic, guy named Phil, called out. "Beck, someone here for you." I rolled out from under the truck. Martin was standing just inside the doorway, looking uncomfortable. His tie was loosened, his confident posture from dinner gone. "Can we talk?" he asked. "I'm working." 5 minutes. I stood, wiped my hands on a rag, and walked to the office. He followed. I sat at my desk. He stood in the doorway. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want to understand what happened last night." "You were there." "No, I mean, I want to understand why. Why you'd destroy everything Hazel built. Why you'd humiliate her in front of a business partner. Why I'd hold her accountable." He stopped. "That's what you call this? Accountability?" "That's exactly what it is. It's revenge." She made one comment. She made an assumption, in a language she thought I didn't speak, in front of a partner she was lying to about funding stability, while violating 3 separate sections of our investment agreement. That's not one comment. That's a pattern. Martin crossed his arms. "Beck, Hazel respects you. She does. She just..." "Just what?" "Just thought you'd want to step back. Enjoy retirement, not worry about business details anymore." "She thought I was obsolete." "No one said that." "She did. In German." He didn't have an answer. "Martin," I said, "let me ask you something. How long have you been operations manager?" 3 years. "And in those 3 years, how many times did Hazel mention that I speak German?" "Never." "How many times did she mention that I built and sold a successful business before funding hers?" "I knew you'd done something with auto parts." "Did you know it was 4 locations, that I ran it for over 2 decades, that I handled negotiations with suppliers in 3 languages?" "No." "Why not?" He hesitated. "I guess she didn't think it was relevant." "Right. Because the person who funded her entire operation, who made her business possible, who has 23 years of experience building and managing companies, that person wasn't relevant to the business conversation?" Martin shifted his weight. "Look, maybe she should have communicated better, but you didn't have to blow everything up. There were other ways to handle this." "Like what?" "Like talking to her privately, like setting up a meeting, like not destroying a major partnership in front of everyone. I tried private, called her after the first dinner. She told me business stuff wasn't my thing anymore." That's exactly what she said. On Saturday, word for word." Martin went quiet. "She made a choice," I continued. "She decided I didn't matter, that I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't care. And when I showed her otherwise, she learned a lesson she should have learned years ago." "What lesson?" "That assumptions cost money." Martin stared at me for a long moment. "You know what? Maybe Hazel was right about you." "How's that?" "Maybe you are outdated. Maybe you don't understand modern business. Because modern business is about relationships, about trust, about not destroying your own daughter's work over hurt feelings." I stood up. "Martin, you have 5 seconds to get out of my shop." He didn't move. "Or what?" "Or I'll make sure every potential partner Hazel approaches knows exactly how she treats her investors, how she misrepresents funding, how she signs contracts without authorization. You think Klaus was the only person who'll care about that?" Martin's face went pale. "You wouldn't." "Try me." He left. I sat back down and took a breath. Phil poked his head in. "Everything okay?" "Fine." I went back to the F-150. Finished the starter. Let the work clear my head. By Friday, Hazel had called 8 more times. Sent a dozen text messages, each one more desperate. I didn't respond to any of them. Saturday, I worked alone at the shop. Organized inventory, rebuilt a carburetor. Around 3 p.m., someone knocked on the window. Hazel. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept. I unlocked the door. "Thanks for seeing me," she said. "I'm busy." "I know, I needed to try one more time." "Hazel, please, just let me say this." She took a breath. "I was wrong. About all of it. About treating you like you didn't matter. About assuming you wouldn't understand. About taking your support for granted. You're right. I forgot where I came from. I forgot that you made everything possible. And I'm sorry." "Okay. Is that it? Just okay?" What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me how to fix this. Figure some things out. I have. I've been thinking about nothing else for 4 days. I understand now. Then tell me what you learned. She hesitated. That I need to respect you more. Surface level. Go deeper. That I shouldn't have dismissed your experience. Deeper. She looked frustrated. Dad, I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to understand why you felt comfortable dismissing me in the first place. What made you think that was okay? What happens when you confuse success with independence? She was quiet for a long time. You're right, she said finally. I did think that. I thought because I was running things day to day, because I was making the decisions, I thought that meant it was mine. Just mine. And now? Now I know it's not. Now I know I built on something you created, and I didn't respect that. That's closer. So can we fix this? Can you come back? Not yet? Why not? Because understanding something intellectually isn't the same as learning it. You need to feel what it's like to operate without that foundation, to make hard choices, to figure out if you can actually run this business or if you've been coasting on infrastructure I paid for. Her eyes filled with tears. That's cruel. That's honest. I might lose everything. Then you'll rebuild, like I did. She turned away, walked to the door, stopped. I love you, Dad, she said without looking back. I know you do. Then why? Because love isn't the same as respect, and you need to learn the difference. She left. I stood in the doorway and watched her drive away. Sunday afternoon, Klaus called, said he wanted to meet. We met at a coffee shop. He arrived exactly on time. Beck, thank you for coming. We sat, ordered coffee. I have been thinking about Wednesday, he said. I will not be pursuing the partnership with Hazel. Figured. Not because of funding, because of judgment. Dismissing her primary investor in front of a business partner, signing contracts without authorization, making assumptions. He paused. These are character flaws. I nodded. I came to tell you something else, he continued. I am beginning a different project. Real estate development. I need someone with operational experience. Someone who understands systems and foundations. He looked at me. I would like you to consider consulting. Advisory role, part-time. Why me? Because Wednesday night, you showed me something rare. Someone who understands power without needing to flaunt it. Someone who can make hard decisions calmly. He smiled slightly. And someone who speaks German. He stood. Think about it. Call me when you decide. He left cash on the table and walked out. I sat there for a moment, then pulled out my phone. Text from Hazel. I found an investor. Meeting tomorrow. Can you be there? I stared at the message. She was still trying. Still scrambling. Still hoping I'd fix everything for her. But she hadn't learned yet. I typed back, no. Sent it. Then I blocked her number. Not forever. Just until she stopped looking for answers outside herself. I drove to the shop and stood in the middle of the garage, taking in the ordered space, the tools where they belonged. This was what I'd built when no one was watching, what I maintained when no one cared. Not because someone funded it, because I knew how. And knowing how, really knowing, not assuming, doesn't expire. Hazel would figure that out, or she wouldn't. Either way, I was done teaching her. I'd shown her the foundation, shown her what happened when you took it for granted. What she did with that knowledge was up to her. I pulled out my phone, found Klaus's number, and typed a short email. I'm interested. Let's talk details. Sent. And for the first time in 12 years, I felt like myself again. Not someone's convenient assumption. Just Beck Darren, someone who understood how things worked. Someone who built foundations. Competence doesn't retire. It waits. Wednesday night had been its reminder.